taking his judicial oath to become the 113th Supreme Court Justice. He took his constitutional oath earlier with Chief Justice Roberts. Coming up, live coverage of the swearing-in ceremony, the official one at the White House.
Hello, Burley.
Hello, Your Honor. Sir.
Oh, of course.
I'm here to request special dispensation regarding the boundaries of jurisdiction.
Proceed.
I'd like permission to travel north of the city, Your Honor.
Well, that is quite a request, Burley, considering what happened last time.
Well, you know, it was a misunderstanding.
Yeah. Well, Demon, let's get this over with. Burley Soames, Warden of Manhattan and the 5 boroughs, on what grounds do you make this request?
I've come to believe that a human is on the verge of using his miracle, which would be a formidable advancement for the other side.
Evidence?
The presence of guardian angels, Your Honor. Both the White Dog in the east and Cecil Mature.
What else?
Well, I've had a vision. A red-haired girl, drawn in a fugue with the blood of a virgin.
Burley, that could be anyone.
No, okay. Lou, I mean, he's already been seen with a girl matching that exact description. Your Honor, I just need the permission to go north.
Denied. This one is too personal. Your prohibition from the Northern Territories is upheld.
Lucifer! I need to stop this one, now!
Now, you have no idea what now is. Now I was flying. Now I breathed fire, and I ate them as they fled. Now I whipped my tail, and the winds trembled. Now I am hidden in this pale shade of flesh and bone. Now I am hidden in this pale shade of flesh and bone. Pale shade of flesh and bone. Now I am witness to man's eternal salvation. Now I am witness to his demise. Do not speak to me of time, demon. Its simplest ebbs and turns elude your meager understanding. Find another way, now!
Magi, from the Greek magos, more currently translated as magician or practitioner of magic. Traditionally, there have been 2 types of known magicians: white magicians, who usually adorn a white robe, and black magicians, who usually adorn a black robe. Today we are going to focus on black magicians. Black magicians were known to do many things, in particular, conjuring up demons and making them do their bidding. In order to conjure a demon, a magician must first do something known as a summoning spell. They would summon the demon in order to make it appear in front of them. And once the demon made its appearance, it was bound to the will of the black magician, meaning that the black magician could issue the demon orders, and the demon was obligated to fulfill those orders. Who cares, you might say? That was then, this is now. Modern man is not susceptible to the false beliefs of such hocus pocus. We're much more civilized now, you might say. To that I would respond, wrong, sir, you are wrong. Let's see what happens when you go to court. You appear before a man in a black robe. No, he is not called a magician, but oftentimes he is called a magistrate. See, magician, magi, magic, magistrate. And when you appear before this black-robed magistrate, he does presume to have some sort of magical power to force his will on you and make you do his bidding. But before he can do any of that, he first needs to get you to appear. And how does he get you to appear? By issuing you something called a summons. So let's recap. A black-robed magician would summon a demon and make it appear and make it bound to the will of the black-robed wearing man. A black-robed magistrate will summons you to make an appearance, and once you do, you are bound to the will of a black-robed wearing man. Is there that much of a difference between then and now? Is all of this just semantics and just a coincidence? I would say not, but the question is up to you to answer. Is the judicial system ran by black magicians?
Now, when I started going into the federal courts, they were building new ones, and the one in Charlottesville, Virginia, was absolutely palatial. It had huge chandeliers, it had carpets 1.5 feet thick, you know, and they had special stands built with the built-in microphones and all this for testimony. So I began to think that our courts were really palaces because they were so palatial. But after a lot of experience in the court and how the courts are run, I realized they're not palaces, they're actually temples. And they're temples of a religious system which we know nothing about, because they have not one but 2 secret legal codes which you American citizens are never informed about by the lawyers or the judges. Now, the first code is the Kabbalah itself, which is a mystical religious precept, and the code itself is based on this. Now, I discovered this quite by accident, because in my research for my book, I found I do what they call total research. I go back and I check every newspaper article, every magazine article, and every book on my subject. And I can do this because I learned when I did this research for the Federal Reserve book in 1948, and I had to go through 2,000 books to get that book. And I was faced with the entire journals of the American Economic Association, which were a set of about 40 books of about 1,000 pages each. So I had to learn to go through thousands of pages very quickly. And I did learn to do that. And I think one of your speakers here has pointed out that you can develop this ability. What you do is you don't skim over, but you scan. You scan the pages very quickly with your eyes. I regularly go through about 10,000 pages a day in my research, which seems like an impossibility, but it's really no problem, because first you know what you're looking for and you focus on what you're looking for, and it's really not that difficult to do. So anyway, I picked up an article in the Columbia Law Review, June 1935, by a Dr. Felix Cohen, who had been a professor of law at Columbia University for many years. Now, Dr. Cohen said, due process of law is a metaphysical cover-up phrase. Legal concepts such as corporations or property rights are supernatural entities which do not have a verifiable existence except to the eyes of faith. Rules of law which refer to these legal concepts are theorems. Jurisprudence is a special branch of the science of transcendental nonsense. Now, there's a professor of law at Columbia said this. And so that is how I found out that there is a transcendental concept in our entire legal system which goes back to the Kabbalah and which is, was described by another professor of law, Fred Rodell, at Yale University. He's written a very good book on the lawyers, by the way. He said that lawyers are purveyors of streamlined voodoo and chromium-plated theology. And he calls law a high-class racket. So you see, I'm quoting now from law professors themselves, and I think what it is that they become disappointed in their students whom they have tried really to make into good lawyers, and they go out and they become racketeers. And so they're venting their frustration at the way these people turn out. So when the law professors themselves call this chromium-plated theology and transcendental nonsense, you can see that I am justified in saying that these secret codes are codes of the temple. Now this goes even further. The judges refer to themselves as the cult of the robe. Now the cult of the robe means that this is a 5,000-year-old cult, and they wear the black robe, which is the color of death. They do not wear the color white, which is the color of justice. Traditionally, in our culture and in all cultures, white has been the color of purity and of justice. So why is it that the judges do not wear white robes? Because they go back to the Babylonian cult of Baal 5,000 years ago, which is fully described in my book, The Curse of Canaan. And when you go into an American courtroom, you're going into a temple of voodoo, the cult of Baal, which was based upon child sacrifice and based upon sexual orgies. And this is the basis of our legal system.
This is a nighthawk robe.
And you are a nighthawk.
I am a nighthawk. It's only one nighthawk, and everybody else will have on white robes just like this, very plain and, you know, nothing fancy.
Nothing fancy. This is formal wear.
During a cross-laying ceremony during the naturalization, he will bring the flame in to Pastor Rob or whoever officiates the ceremony. Then they will share the flame with all the brothers and sisters in the circle, and from darkness, now it's light because all these flames, right?
Right.
And then they will light the cross.
This was the outfit you were naturalized in?
This is a nighthawk robe.
Nighthawk.
Right.
Okay.
Any question?
No. Would you mind if I tried on the hat?
I don't have any problem with her driving on the hat.
I think this might be a first.
Let's see if you got it on right. You don't have it on right. You like me to put it on for you?
Yeah. Did I have it on backwards?
Well, no, but you didn't have it on right.
All right.
But I'll put it
You
on
have to understand I haven't had a Ku Klux Klan hat on.
Yeah.
You know,
So this would be a new thing for you.
I thought it'd have eyepieces, you know, like those spooky things.
Well, you know, if you put a mask on, most people don't wear a mask, and I'll tell you something else. Most people don't wear the hood anymore. You know, if you put a mask on, most people don't wear a mask, and I'll tell you something else. Most people don't wear the hood anymore. 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 You know, if you put a mask on, most people don't wear a mask, and I'll tell you something else. But the Nighthawk, he does. But most people don't wear the. See, so you do have it kind of on, right?
That's Asherah, and this right here, he's a representative of Baal, and that's why he's wearing the Baal hat, or Dagon cap, which Dagon is just the Philistine form of Baal. If you don't, let's do a quick search on that. Or however you want Dogon hat. It doesn't matter how you spell it. Dogon, Dagon. That's the ancient fish god. I guess it does matter how you spell it. Those two, Dagon hat. Because Dogon brings up the Dogon tribe. Oh, here's a perfect visualization of the Dagon hat. So that's why he wears this hat right here, because it represents the Dagon god worshipped by the Philistines, the ancient Philistines spoken of in the Bible. And Dagon was their god of the harvest, you know. Just like Baal was the Canaanites' god of the harvest. It's all the same thing, different names. Okay, it's all part of the church's mystery religion that they practice, because they don't practice the teachings of Yahushua whatsoever. Okay, but you see that? Make that even a little bigger. That's it, man. That's the fish hat right there. And that's what this guy's wearing. That's what he's wearing, okay? That's, like I said, that's because he's a representative of Baal, the devil.
We turn now to the confirmation hearings of Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch. One of the most riveting moments in the Gorsuch hearing occurred when Minnesota Senator Al Franken questioned Gorsuch about his ruling in a case involving a truck driver who got fired after he disobeyed a supervisor and abandoned his trailer that he was driving because he was on the verge of freezing to death. The truck driver couldn't drive off with the trailer because the trailer's brakes had frozen. In the case, Judge Gorsuch cast the sole dissent ruling in favor of the trucking company against the trucker. In a moment, we'll hear Franken questioning Judge Gorsuch about the case. But first, let's turn to the truck driver himself, Alphonse Madden, who spoke in Washington, D.C. a few days ago at an event organized by Senate Democrats.
In January of 2009, I was working as a commercial truck driver for Trans Am Trucking Incorporated of Olathe, Kansas. I was hauling a load of meat through the state of Illinois. After stopping to resolve a discrepancy in the location to refuel, the brakes on the trailer froze. I contacted my employer and they arranged for a repair unit to come to my location. I expected that help would arrive within an hour. I awoke 3 hours later to discover that I could not feel my feet. My skin was burning and cracking. My speech was slurred and I was having trouble breathing. The temperature that night was roughly 27 degrees Fahrenheit below zero. The heater in the cabin was not producing heat, and the temperature gauge in the truck was reading -7 degrees below zero. After informing my employer of my physical condition, they responded by telling me to simply hang in there. As I sat there physically suffering in the cold, I started having thoughts that I was going to die. My physical condition was fading rapidly. I decided to try to detach the trailer from the truck and drive to safety. When I stepped out of the truck, I was concerned that I may fall because I was on the verge of passing out. I feared that if I fell, I would not have the strength to stand up and would die. I walked to the back of the trailer to place a lock on the cargo doors. The distance that I walked to the back of the trailer seemed like an eternity, as my feet absolutely had no feeling at all. I eventually was able to detach the tractor from the trailer. Before I left, I called my employer to notify them that I had decided to hit shelter, and they ordered me to either drag the trailer or stay put. In my opinion, clearly their cargo was more important than my life. My employer fired me for disobeying their orders. And I'd like to make it clear that although I detached the tractor from the trailer, I returned and I completed my job, and I was still fired. Okay. I disputed my termination from Trans Am Trucking and ultimately won. This was a 7-year battle. 7 different judges heard my case. One of those judges found against me. That judge was Neil Gorsuch.
That was Alphonse Madden, the trucker, the driver in the case involving Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch. At Tuesday's hearing, Senator Al Franken questioned Gorsuch about his dissent in the case.
There were 2 safety issues here. One, the possibility of freezing to death or driving with that rig in a very, very dangerous way. Which would you have chosen? Which would you have done, Judge?
Oh, Senator, I don't know what I would have done if I were in his shoes, and I don't blame him at all for a moment for doing what he did do. I empathize with him entirely.
Okay, we've been talking about this case. You haven't decided what you would have done? You haven't thought about for a second what you would have done in this case?
I thought a lot about this case.
And what would you have done?
I totally empathize and understand.
I'm asking you a question. Please answer questions.
Senator, I don't know. I wasn't in the man's shoes, but I understand why he did.
You don't know what you would have done. Okay, I tell you what I would have done. I would have done exactly what he did.
Yeah, I understand.
And I think everybody here would have done exactly what he did. It is absurd to say this company is in its rights to fire him because he made the choice of possibly dying from freezing to death or causing other people to die possibly by driving an unsafe vehicle. That's absurd. Now, I had a career in identifying absurdity. And I know it when I see it. And it makes me, it makes me question your judgment.
Kristen, let's begin with you. Can you talk about the significance of this case? Judge Gorsuch, the sole dissenter, siding with the company that this man should have remained in sub-freezing weather in this broken-down truck, even if it meant he would die?
Well, it's not just this one case. At the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, what we historically do is we review the full record of nominees that are put forth for the Supreme Court. And we did that with Judge Gorsuch. We looked at many of the cases that he authored or joined the opinion in during his tenure on the 10th Circuit. And what we found was a pattern that suggests that he is not someone who believes that victims should be using the courtroom as a place to vindicate their civil rights. He has a very narrow view of civil rights. This was a pattern that emerged for us as we evaluated the many cases that were issued or authored by Judge Gorsuch. We found this pattern especially pronounced in the criminal justice context when we looked at cases involving police officers, for example. Judge Gorsuch is someone who has a very law and order outlook. He's somebody who is very pro law enforcement. There's one case that stands out from his record in which an officer sought qualified immunity after being sued in a wrongful death matter after shooting a victim in the head at close range with a taser. The victim died. And there, Judge Gorsuch determined that the officer was entitled to qualified immunity. And there were a number of cases like this. In a separate criminal justice matter, Judge Gorsuch throughout these hearings has gone to great lengths to say that he looks at people individually. But in some of the criminal justice cases, he talked about cops as a general group who, we shouldn't question or second-guess their judgments. So he's somebody who is bringing to bear a very pro-law enforcement perspective, and I think that's important because victims in the trucking case, victims in criminal justice cases often are, going to the courts as a forum of last resort. And Mr. Gorsuch is not somebody who views the courts as a place for victims of discrimination to really vindicate their rights, and that's deeply problematic.
This particular case is stunning, and Senator Franken spent a lot of time on this, asking Judge Gorsuch, would he want to be on the road of a trucker who was experiencing hypothermia, who was not able to drive this road correctly, not only would he be endangering himself, the trucker, but other people on the road. Can you talk more about this case?
Well, you're exactly right. And it's interesting, in the excerpts you played, the judge continues to try to claim that he has empathy for this truck driver. But when the pedal hit the metal, so to speak, he did precisely the opposite. He did what he does in so many cases, but sided with the corporation, which claimed under the law that it had the ability to insist that that truck driver either drive the truck with the trailer attached or stay right where he is. As Senator Franken pointed out, the result of either one of those likely would have been his death. And the majority in that case, and all the other judges that looked at it, saw very clearly that the Labor Department was correct and that there was no good justification for what the employer had done. Gorsuch disagreed, as he so often does in cases involving corporations, where he very consistently tends to favor the corporation over the individual employee, consumer, whatever the case may be. In fact, we found that out of 11 dissents that he wrote relating corporations, 10 of them, all but one, were in favor of the corporation.
Well, let me ask you about the judge here, and I'm sure there are always things I agree with people on.
Yeah, and let me tell you why I bring up that.
I'm sure you have lots of reasons for bringing that up, but let me get to the meat of why I want to talk to you, which is about the Supreme Court nomination. Now, I'm sure you don't agree with a lot of the beliefs that the judge has, but the core question is, can he interpret the Constitution faithfully? So I'm going through your materials to figure out what exactly your problem is with this guy, and I get to this. This is a letter that you all sent, your party sent to Democratic members of the Senate at the beginning of this month, and you said here, he has, quote, an extreme ideological agenda supported by some of the most dangerous, ultra-conservative, and white nationalist groups. Now, what does that even mean?
I think that this means that Gorsuch is somebody who's shown through his long record that every act that he's taken, whenever he's given the chance between siding with a corporation or a working class person, every single time he's picked the other side than I would have picked. I don't know if you were following this case.
Wait, back up here. So you said white supremacist organizations. I mean, you have every right to disagree with his decisions, but you're trying to tar him with the brush of white supremacy. And my question is, on the basis of what evidence did you say that?
Gorsuch is, Trump has this Muslim ban he keeps trying to pass. It's been swatted down by judges twice. And the Supreme Court is just one justice away from somebody who will overrule those lower court decisions and make a Muslim ban the law of America. I thought America was a land that believed in religious freedom for all people, and I haven't heard Gorsuch forcefully denounce a Muslim ban. Have you?
Hard to believe you're actually saying that.
It's one of the core questions of public policy right now, is whether or not our country is one that it has a place for people of all religions, or whether Trump can be allowed to pass a Muslim ban. And until...
But Judge Jordan, that may be right, but you tried to tie him to white supremacists. And I just want you to concede that whatever one can say about him or his record, that is an unfair thing to say, and you shouldn't say things like that unless you have reason for saying them, and you don't.
I think that short of him denouncing Trump's Muslim ban, he comes pretty close to that line.
So my children haven't denounced Trump's Muslim ban. Are they white supremacists too? Is that the standard?
I think that there are a lot of problems with the nomination of Gorsuch. He's somebody who, whenever given the choice...
You said something appalling and unfair. Just concede it and let's move on. How's that?
Let's move on.
Okay. I wish you would concede it. I think our viewers understand, and you understand, that you did something that's indefensible, and I'm sorry that you did. But I want you to get to the court. Look, your point is that he's against working people, right?
That's right. I think whenever given the choice to choose between a corporation and a working person, he chooses the wrong side.
There's nothing he can do about it. Well, that's what the job is. Do you understand that?
It's a pretty funny version of the job where every time he's asked to make a decision, he always chooses the side that favors corporations or favors the powerful.
Why aren't you complaining to your friends up in the Senate, the ones you're writing letters to about white supremacy? Why don't you say, hey, pass a law protecting people whose trucks break down in the snow?
The court actually sided with the truck driver in that case. But it's a funny thing about Gorsuch's record
but in
that whenever
specific, okay, but in that specific decision, as
or
you know,
there's
there were
another
Democrats
case. There's
who
another
sided
case
with Gorsuch because it's a question of interpreting the law. The same with the Hobby Lobby case, in which
the Hobby Lobby case, where he said that the right of a corporation's religious beliefs are more important than the person who works there. You haven't read
the decision.
That's the point. Wouldn't you think that if Judge Gorsuch was just interpreting the law as an even-handed observer, he might sometimes, somewhere in that career, have found an opportunity to side with the less powerful, side with the working person instead of with the powerful corporate interest?
Well, actually,
the reason, Tucker, the reason I pointed out that, Tucker, I'm not talking about fashion. I'm talking about who has the power to fire who. And if you think that the employers and the CEOs are the less powerful people in a comparison with the people who work for them, then I got news for you. You got to go. No, I don't think that's right. I think that when you have a person who every single time they're asked to make the choice chooses the side of the corporation, he's somebody who thinks that the huge unlimited amounts of money that are currently flooding our electoral system are not enough.
During Tuesday's hearing, Neil Gorsuch faced questions about his views on the Supreme Court Citizens United ruling and the $10 million dark money campaign that is supporting his nomination. This is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island.
How would you describe any differences that you may have in judicial philosophy with Chief Judge Garland?
I would leave that for others to characterize. I don't like it when people characterize me, and I would not prefer to characterize him. He can characterize himself.
What's interesting is that this group sees a huge difference between you that I don't understand. The dark money group that is spending money on your election spent at least $7 million against him getting a hearing and a confirmation here, and indeed produced that result by spending that money. And then now we have $10 million going the other way. That's a $17 million delta. And for the life of me, I'm trying to figure out what they see in you that makes that $17 million delta worth their spending. Do you have any answer to that?
You'd have to ask them.
I can't because I don't know who they are. It's just a front group.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse went on to ask about billionaire Philip Anschutz, who has close ties to Judge Gorsuch.
If a question were to come up regarding recusal on the court, how would we know that the partiality question in a recusal matter had been adequately addressed if we did not know who was spending all of this money to get you confirmed? Hypothetically, it could be one individual. Hypothetically, it could be your friend, Mr. Anschutz. We don't know because it's dark money. Is it any cause of concern to you that your nomination is the focus of a $10 million political spending effort and we don't know who's behind it?
Senator, there's a lot about the confirmation process today that I regret.
Still with us is Kristen Clark, President and Executive Director of Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. She'll be testifying Thursday before the Senate Judiciary Committee. And Elliot Mintzberg, Senior Fellow at People for the American Way, former Chief Counsel for Oversight Investigations of the House Judiciary Committee. Elliot Mintzberg, what about this issue of dark money? It also goes to issues, for example, of Citizens United. But even the campaign, it might shock people to know what's happening now, $10 million around Judge Gorsuch.
Well, I think Senator Whitehouse was asking those questions particularly to highlight the significance of Citizens United and in part of Gorsuch's refusal to state what he thinks about that decision, just as he refused to state what he thinks about virtually any other decision by the Supreme Court. And what I think the main point is that as a result of Citizens United, we don't know anything at all about who's made these contributions, who's made these expenditures, more importantly, because the Supreme Court has ruled that we can't find out and that congressional attempts at action to do that are unconstitutional. And his illustrations perfectly show what is so dangerous about the Citizens United decision. Judge Gorsuch basically just shrugged his shoulders at all of that and said, that's not my problem, that's not my concern. And again, that's not what we want on the United States Supreme Court.
The Senate has officially voted to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch to be the 9th justice on the Supreme Court. And this is a huge victory for corporate America because he will undoubtedly do the bidding and rule in favor of large multinational corporations. Now, the question is, how did all of this happen? How did Republicans get their guy on the court after blocking Obama's nominee for a whole year? I mean, they were rewarded for obstructionism, right? So how did they do this? Well, once the Republican Party realized that Democrats would be filibustering the vote to confirm Neil Gorsuch, at that point, they needed 60 votes to override the filibuster. So they decided to change the rules and just do away with filibusters. They nuked it as an option and made it so that way you can no longer filibuster Supreme Court nominees. So that way all they would need to get their guy on the Supreme Court was a 50+1 vote majority. So the Huffington Post explains Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and his fellow Republicans pulled the nuclear rules trigger Thursday, gutting the filibuster rule for Supreme Court nominees after Democrats blocked President Trump's conservative pick, Neil Gorsuch. We need to restore the norms and traditions of the Senate and get past this unprecedented partisan filibuster, McConnell said. Wow. And now we have an extremist, just as extreme as Scalia perhaps, on the Supreme Court again. And let me remind you that your new Supreme Court justice had $10 million in dark money behind him. So it's dark money because companies and corporations and billionaires were spending this money anonymously. So we don't know who's funding him. So if something that they're involved with, if they're involved in a Supreme Court case comes up before Neil Gorsuch, we don't know whether or not he'll be forced to recuse himself, or we won't know whether or not he should recuse himself because we don't know where that money was being, where it came from.
This is good news for, well, everybody. Not just Donald Trump, but for all Americans, well, really for everybody on the planet. According to the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Mr. Grassley, Neil Gorsuch is going to be confirmed Friday, whether the Democrats like it or not. As of Friday night, as of midnight Friday this week, Neil Gorsuch will be on the Supreme Court. Okay, why is that important? That's important for several reasons, but keep this in mind. The good guys, well, there are three branches of the federal government. We all know that. There's the legislative, there's the judicial, and there is the executive branch. Okay, we have control of the executive branch. That's Donald Trump and Mike Pence. We have control of the legislative branch. That's the United States House and the United States Senate. What we don't have control of yet is the United States Supreme Court or the judicial branch. We're going to have control of that, at least the Supreme Court, as of Friday midnight. So it's effectively a done deal. Okay, I know there are lots and lots and lots of other federal courts. There are circuit courts and there are district courts. Doesn't matter. Donald Trump and the legislative branch have, well, they're going to appoint more federal judges than any president in the last 40 years. Thank you, Democrats. Here's how that worked. Back in 2013, the Democrats triggered what they called the nuclear option. They did away with this thing where you could filibuster to stop the process of nominating and appointing federal judges. But the good news is, as of Friday midnight, according to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Grassley, Neil Gorsuch will be on the Supreme Court. Done deal. Folks, you got to keep in mind, it's going to be generations before the Democrats will even be able to undo this. That's before they will be able to undo it. It's not that they're going to undo it, but it will be generations before they're even capable of undoing it. And the chances are they're probably not going to undo it for the rest of my life.